In a previous video, I explained how to update the manual mesh firmware on the Ender 3 V2 3D printer. And one of the problems you have when you update the manual mesh is the mesh disappears. So unless you manually recreate the mesh, or there's a way that I'm going to explain here, you can actually save the mesh before you do the update, and then copy and paste the different settings for the mesh back in, and you'll be able to use that. So once you update the firmware for the manual mesh, your manual mesh will be set all to zeros. And your option at that point will be to re-go through the manual mesh. In my case, I'm using a 5x5 mesh. Or what I'm going to explain here is I saved the mesh prior, and then I was able to restore the mesh issuing Gcode commands. So to do this, you'll need the Octoprint connection, which in my case I'm using the Raspberry Pi, and through that connection they have a terminal, and in that terminal you can enter Gcodes directly. So I'm in Octoprint right here, and it's connected to the Ender 3 V2. I'm going to go to my terminal, and right now I'm getting all the temperature messages. I don't need those, so I'm going to suppress those, and they're gone. The first command you would enter, this is prior to doing your firmware update, is a G29 S0. And that will display your mesh. Right now, because it's not been turned on yet, mesh leveling is off. But these are the 5x5 points that my mesh is set to. So this at least is a starting point. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and copy it. I'm doing a Control-C. I'm going to take it to another document, and I'm going to paste it in here. So now I've got this saved, and I can use this anytime I want, but there's another command that we can enter that will give the actual Gcodes to enter back in to do the settings. So let's switch back over, and that code is M503. The M503 gives all kinds of information, but what we're interested in are the first 5 positions. There'll be 25 different lines here, and this line, the -8,000, will match this line up here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the rest of this, Control-C, switch back to my document, and Control-V, paste it back in. So now I have this all in a document, and what you'll see, one of my settings, number 4, is actually a 0, so it messes things up a little bit. This is actually the 5th setting here, which is set to a 0. So the 8, 5, 7, and 3, 8, 8, 5, 7, and 3, and then the 0. Those are my first 5 positions. Then my next 5 positions will start here, and it just continues on down till you have all 25 positions. Now, what you'll do is after you do your firmware update, you'll copy the G29 command. I did a Control-C on it. Go back to the terminal, and you will enter that, and that will update that position. So if I were to take this and say make that a 9, we just updated that position, and if I go back to the G29 S0 and display it, my first position now is a 9, which I don't want, so I'm going to put it back to an 8. There it's in an 8. And then we'll issue the G29 command again, and we'll see that it's been put back to the 8. So that's how you can restore each of your 5x5 points. If you do a bigger mesh, you'd have more points to restore. It takes a little bit to just copy and paste. It's 25 copy and paste, but for me it was a lot quicker than going through the manual mesh. So I hope this video gave you some information that you can use, and happy 3D printing.